People in Iraq's second largest city have spent a year living under the control of the Islamic State militant group. Residents of Mosul are facing oppression, persecution and the threat of execution. The insurgents have rapidly expanded their areas of control in Iraq and neighboring Syria. Today, we look at what the future may hold in Mosul and the rest of the Middle East.
But first, we go live to the northern Iraqi city of Arbil. It's about 70 kilometers from Mosul and home to many camps for people who fled the city. And NHK Dubai Bureau Chief Hideki Nakayama joins us from there. Hideki, what's life like in Mosul under the militants?
Well, Aki, people say it's like living in a huge prison surrounded by walls and checkpoints. They can't leave the city unless a relative stays behind as a guarantor to be killed if they don't return. We've obtained a video taken recently by a resident of Mosul. It shows how Islamic State fighters are making their presence felt. Thousands of militants, many of them foreigners, are positioned around the city. They've got a network of informants too. And they've banned cell phones strictly to control the information that's sent outside. And they'll punish anyone who speaks out against them, even children or the elderly. So the group controls the city through surveillance and intimidation.
Facing this situation, then what are the Iraqi government forces doing? What are they doing to try to get back the city?
Well, retaking it won't be easy for the Iraqi military. They'll have to overcome sectarian rifts to fight the group. The Shia-led government needs Sunni Muslims to join the fight against the Sunni militants. And Sunni militia groups are running the training camps, but they're short of weapons due to lack of support by Iraq's army. The government is worried that Sunnis could turn against it after ousting the militants. Shia militias are growing stronger on the front lines in western Iraq, but if the government uses them, it could anger the region's Sunni majority. The government has to figure out the right mix of Sunnis and Shias and how to work with the area's Kurdish leaders. So it's hard to say when they'll be ready to try to retake Mosul.
Thank you. That was Hideki Nakayama reporting from Arbil.
The capture of Mosul proved to be a turning point for Islamic State. The group used the city as a base to expand its influence. And 1 year on, the militant's grip is as strong as ever. Leaders of the G7 nations discussed how to fight the militants at a summit this week in Germany. They said the fight against terrorism and violent extremism will have to remain the priority for the whole international community. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi was invited to the summit and met with U.S. President Barack Obama on Monday. And Obama acknowledged the limits of the coalition.
We don't yet have a complete strategy because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis as well about how recruitment takes place, how that training takes place.
The militants declared the establishment of a caliphate last year after seizing Mosul and areas of Iraq near the Syrian border. Experts say they're financing their activities by selling oil from fields and refineries they've seized. The militants have proven adept at using video, the internet, social networking services, and other media to promote their ideas. The UN says around 25,000 fighters from more than 100 countries had joined the group by March. Their brutality has shocked the world. They don't hesitate to show executions of hostages, including soldiers and journalists. Last August, a U.S.-led coalition launched airstrikes on the militants approaching Arbil from Mosul. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and other Middle East nations joined the coalition. In March, Iraqi government forces recaptured Tikrit, a strategically important city between Mosul and Baghdad. Coalition airstrikes aided the operation. But in May, the militants took control of Ramadi in western Iraq. They then seized Palmyra, a city in Syria known for its ancient ruins. A year since the insurgents drove Iraqi forces from Mosul, they've only grown in power, and their threat is greater than ever.
We are now joined by Koichiro Tanaka. He is an expert in Middle East affairs with the Institute of Energy Economics, Japan. So, Mr. Tanaka, we just saw how the militants made an advance recently in Ramadi, western Iraq, and also in Palmyra, in the central part of Syria. They are quite close now to the capitals of each country, but why is it so difficult? Well, it's been a year since they are here. It's been almost a year since the coalition started the operations against them. Why is it difficult to weaken them?
Well, first of all, the coalition is not actually a coalition. The Iraqi society is so fragmented. You have the Sunnis, you have the Shiites, you have the Kurds. And those three sectors are not working in tandem. So the forces on the ground are actually not enough to counter the ISIS expansion.
Well, you talked about the forces underground, but there was a moment that they retook Tikrit.
Right.
And there was expectations that they would go from here to Mosul. But what happened is that they were taking another city.
Sure.
What's the problem with the Iraqi government forces?
Well, first of all, Tikrit was sort of an example that could not be, say, repeated in other locations. It was quite isolated in the sense that it would not be able to take reinforcements from the western part of the city. So if you cut off the city from the north and south, then it's quite a location that you could surround and encircle and then bomb and to recapture. But Mosul or Ramadi, these are locations that you have connection to the roads, transportation easily from the neighbor Syria. And unless you totally encircle the cities, those cities, it's not going to be an easy task to do so. And the ground forces on the ground, I mean, the Iraqi forces itself is not strong enough. And we've seen the situation last year in Mosul when it fell in the hands of ISIL that the Iraqi army just fled. They're not strong enough to take on the task.
And some talk about the sectarian divide of the country that is adding to the situation. What is this about?
Well, Tikrit, in recapturing Tikrit, the Shiite militia played a key role. But if you're going to try to repeat the same situation in Mosul or in Ramadi, there's going to be a fierce, say, repercussion from the Sunni population. And it's not going to play well, even if the Iraqi government is to recapture those cities. So there's going to be a rift that is going to be continued and also to be aggravated for a very long time.
Well, but some leaders, it was even told in the G7 leaders that they have the hope for the Prime Minister Abadi of Iraq, that many people tell him to be more inclusive, inclusive. But it seems to me that they're asking something that is impossible. It's a Shia-led government.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when you hear the tribal leaders from Anbar province, I mean, not all of them, but some of them, say, pledging allegiance to Baghdadi, the so-called caliphate of the Islamic State, then you got a problem. Once you supply them with arms and ammunition, the militia may turn against the Iraqi government in the future. So it's not a very easy operation that you have to consider.
And now, looking at the bigger picture of the region, well, if you see this map, it is clearly understood that the problem of Islamic State is not limited only to countries Syria and Iraq. Well, unfortunately, why were they able to spread to the other parts of the region?
Well, initially you have to take into consideration that following the so-called Arab Spring, a lot of these countries in the region was destabilized. For say, Libya was one, Yemen is another, and even Syria is part of that. So once you have a sort of a vacuum of power, it's very easy, or it makes things easy for the extremists to take place, to move into the power vacuum and to take control of the sectors or certain parts of the country. And then you have a problem.
And with the chaos spreading in the Middle East, some people even call it's a spiral of bad things. But by the end of this month, there is some people have hopes on the nuclear deal with Iran and the Western powers. Do you think this will play out to be a very positive thing?
Well, if it's going to be a deal, if there's going to be a deal, it should be a very positive development, meaning that there will be no nuclear Iran that we are going to have to face in the future. But having said that, countries like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very, say, worried about the situation that Iran would remain as a regional power, and these hegemonic maneuvers may threaten their ability to control the region. So in this case, Saudi Arabia may not be welcoming the outcome of the nuclear negotiations, and that would just provide and also add fuel to the sectarian rift in Syria and Iraq, or even in Yemen.
Well, the Obama administration of the United States are saying that if the issue of Iran is solved, it could add to help the situation of the whole Middle East. But this country has, well, they once invaded Iraq. But now the next administration, the Obama administration, is more detaching from the region. So some might wonder, which is better? Should America go in more? Should America leave more?
Well, this is a very difficult question to answer because if the Americans, I mean, if the U.S. troops were still on the ground, this could not have happened. You may say so. But at the same time, the Obama administration came into office simply because of a ticket that he tried to use as detaching the United States from the Middle East, especially from the military conflict.
What do you think of the future of the region? Do you have any hopes?
Well, I would have to keep my. I mean, I would like to keep my hopes, but this situation is bleak. I mean, it's not. I can't foresee in the near future that the conditions and situation on the ground in those parts of the world is going to be stable. I mean, we haven't seen any issue or any issues solved following the so-called Arab Spring that we could be hopeful for.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka.
Well, pleasure.
That was Tanaka Koichiro, an expert on the Middle East with the Institute of Energy Economics, Japan.